Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining What's Your Story this evening in Seattle. And my guest tonight is coming to us from Australia, which is very, very cool. And it's afternoon tomorrow there. So this is going to be a very exciting interview. We had a little bit of a technical problem, but then we got it fixed. It was on my end with the camera, but the camera's fixed now, and we are ready to broadcast. I really want to say thank you so much for your support and for coming on and watching the interviews, connecting with me by email, by my website, by my Facebook page. You all are so very, very supportive, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. It really does my heart good to know that you come on and you watch my guests, because I really do have some amazing guests that are willing to come on and tell their story. And as we all know, everyone's story it's unique to them. And when we listen, we always feel like we might have a piece of that story. I know I always do. So I just want to say thank you, and thank you so much for joining me this evening. It is Halloween here in the United States. So people have been dressed up all day in their favorite costumes. I do want to say that there has been a tragedy tonight in New York City. There was a terrorist attack, and I would love it if you all could just have a moment of silence and send your love and light to the people of New York. So tonight I have a guest that I'm very excited to meet and to interview. Her name is Pat Armitstead. And Pat is going to talk about joyful empowerment. The only way out is through. She's a registered nurse with a major in education. Plus, she is a master practitioner of neurolinguistics and a certified MFIT coach. She's also highly qualified in the performing arts. A professional speaker and motivator, she's an expert on leadership, communication, grief, and stress. Pat is no stranger to grief and loss. Her unique personal perspectives, traumatic past, repeated losses, and eventually mastery as a multi-award-winning speaker, TV and radio host, and exhibiting artist are a rare combination of talents. Pat is a pioneer and thought leader in the area of joy as a transformational agent. From her early years as a registered nurse, she has championed the human spirit, leading people to find joy where it appeared that there was none. Pat's life has been devoted to helping others to transform their lives. What a wonderful thing, right? Transforming other people's lives and her being a catalyst of that. She's a master storyteller. She combines positive psychology principles, emotional intelligence, and neuroscience with real human experiences to bring understanding and meaning of life events. Pat sees crisis as a catalyst for personal growth and ongoing transformation. Over the past 20 years, she has given her highly educational and entertaining presentations into both the business and health sector on topics such as health in the workplace, stress, humor in health, authentic leadership, self-expression and productivity, and storytelling and engagement in the workplace. She is currently doing a national tour of Australia, presenting in 5 states the Mental Health in the Workplace program, which is showing leaders and managers how to have brave conversations. So, without further ado, I would love to introduce you to my guest this evening. And hi, Pat. So nice to see you.
Kathy, thank you so much. Awesome to be here. Very exciting. I'm in Seattle.
And I'm in Australia. I got married in Australia, which is
wow.
Yeah, so I got married there 25 years ago in Sydney. It was such a beautiful place. Love it there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So,
Awesome.
so tell us, I mean, why, when I first started reading about you and started seeing you on Facebook, and I saw that you were a joyologist, how did you become the first world's joyologist? I mean, what a great title.
Um, the name came to me as a result of a series of losses at the turn of the century, which sounds oh so long ago. I had 4 years of crisis, event after event, and the last thing that happened was my partner of 20 years left with another woman. And it was then that I plummeted. I'd actually coped with all the other things one way and another. And my doctor wanted to medicate me. And I said, no, help me deal with my grief. And so rather than be medicated, I went on a journey to find the support I needed. So on the same day, on this particular day, I attended a grieving seminar. Sat next to a couple who changed my life. There were 400 parents in the room who'd lost their children, and the couple next to me were in an extraordinary amount of pain, and I felt their pain like I'd felt no other. And at the break, I followed the man outside and engaged with him, and he shared his story. Their son had died in a fall inside a cinema complex. And we engaged very deeply for about 30 minutes. And when I went home from that event, I had an email from a magician in South Australia, one of the states here, inviting me to take laughter workshops to New Zealand, where I was living at the time. And it was like, oh, for goodness sake, I have to ring this man. So I rang him, and he had me laughing my head off for half an hour. And what I really got in that conversation, whoa, I've just left this room with 400 parents, the grief and the energy that was there in that place. And now, a couple of hours later, I'm over here, and this man is having me laugh my head off, and he's actually not telling me any jokes. And I really got the depth of that mood barometer that we have and all the feelings we can create. And it was in the middle of that conversation that there was just a lull. And in that little quiet moment, a voice came in. Oh my God, there's radiology, pathology, hematology, but no joyology. I'm going to be a joyologist. So I had no idea what that meant or what it could be. To my knowledge, I was the first. There was nothing else online at that time. There are several others now. And I just knew that was a calling from my higher self to, live into something. And that's been my journey since, to support people to find joy where it appears there's none. And, to help them to make meaning of life events.
And that's something that some of us have a really hard time finding in those dark, deep depths of pain and, trauma.
Yes.
It's so difficult to see past that. And
Yes.
to be a joyologist, I mean, I'm calling you.
Yeah, and it's not that we laugh in the face of those things, but it's being able to really get connected to that deeper sense of who we really are. That extraordinary emotional intelligence that we have, and the way when we tune in more and more to our body will guide us to where we go and what we need to do, but we need to be listening. And often these major traumatic events, they're like the Mack truck that that forces us to sit up and listen at a deeper level. And for me, following all those losses, I committed, whatever comes up now, I'm going to go to it. So the last 17, 18 years have been all about paradox and synchronicity. I journal heaps, and being able to, I can go out in intention now. I remember one conference I gave to 2,000 paediatricians, and I was talking about improv and really wanted to help them be in the moment. And so I went out in the afternoon before my talk to see what would happen if I just stepped out in intention. So as I stepped onto the street in Wellington in New Zealand, the first shop across the road was a women's underwear shop. And in one window, it had in huge letters, buy the left cup. And then on the right window, it said, and get the right one free. And I thought, well, I've got to go in there. And as I walked in, this very buxom, cheerful woman behind the counter looked up, put her fingers in her mouth, wolf whistled, and said, nice tits. And exactly. And you know what they sold? They sold the most beautiful underwear for women with breast cancer.
Oh.
Right? And she was just like the absolute opposite of where people might be as they come through the door. So she was just this total motherly, nurturing, buxom, beautiful woman, beautiful energy, who embraced. She embraced everything in the way, and she was, to be good-humoured is to be appropriate or not, right? And she certainly was in the maybe not. Doing so, we get lifted out of. And, people coming in who perhaps have breast cancer, it's not going to change in that instance maybe, but for a moment, they're lifted. Yeah. And you could feel the love, right? So, it's not making fun of, it's, making fun with. And, it was, while it was directed outward, there was she had a real sense for humour. So, I'm sure she would, balance it relative to who was coming in the door.
Right.
And I had a number of other things, and I could go back then and share with the paediatricians, when we get present to life, I could have missed that shop if I wasn't, in intention. I could have gone out and not seen it. It was there, but I mightn't have seen it. I could have just turned right. And so getting people to that place, we're talking a lot about lifting the veil now, and this heightened awareness that we're having. So a lot of my work has been around finding pathways to enable that to happen. Suicide numbers here in Australia are 3,000 a year, and that's a lot for our population. And these people look out and see no hope. So and it's purely perception.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of the research has shown that people who have survived, especially those who've jumped, the minute they've taken the leap, they've known they didn't really want to die. And only those who've survived, of course, are able to come back and share that with us. So, man's resilience and our will to live is huge, but we can look out at life events, and I so understand, and think, if this is it, I'm done. But it's not the truth.
No.
It's not the truth. So, we need a lot of education to help people shift those perceptions, and storytelling, which is why I love the title of your show.
Yes,
Storytelling is a way of doing that, because we don't know who's going to hear what in our presentation, and their life will be changed.
Yeah.
Because it'll be something.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's a beautiful thing, that whole concept that you just presented to us about being present. Because the moment that that happened to me, it was like my eyes became wide open to those possibilities around that I hadn't noticed before. Like you seeing the shop across the way. You might not have seen it, like you said, if you hadn't been hyper aware of just what's happening right at this moment to us. And we get all kinds of signs of what we should be doing next if we really look for them, don't we?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I presented at a conference this last weekend. I had 2 presentations. One was to launch my new TV channel, the Laughter Channel, and the other to present a keynote. So the Laughter Channel was at 10:45 a.m. Friday. At 7:15 a.m., I was heading up to the venue. It was raining, and I think I slipped in the rain, sustained a huge gash in my knee. In that instance, knew I'm not going to be there this morning.
Yeah.
And then it was almost like, remember the movie The Secret?
Yes.
Yes. Things started to unfold. This gorgeous man in a beautiful suit and a nice big umbrella came to my assistance and called an ambulance, and he stayed with me for about 45 minutes until I was safely ensconced in the ambulance. 2 other men came with umbrellas and a jacket, and then 2 railway emergency crew, and then 6 firemen. I'm like, no, I don't think I've ever been surrounded by such a bevy of male energy. And at that point, I had no pain, so adrenaline would be,
Right.
kicking in. And I just was totally aware. It was like moment by moment by moment. Even though this happened to me and it's nasty, look at what I must be radiating in order for these people to arrive and stay. One man even had evidently walked past, and he said, I got about 50 metres down the road, he said, and I felt so ashamed I had to come back. He said, and it was, passing parade, city street, hundreds of people going to and fro, but
Right.
only some saw or felt compelled. So when we become one with ourselves and are able to express totally authentically, it doesn't matter about life events. We've got enough faith in our body to know that we're going to be okay. The wound hardly bled. I was stunned. I was like, what? Can't believe it. And then the whole way through to being sutured, the 2 doctors at the end of the bed and the senior ones instructing the junior one how to suture this particular wound, and neither of them have engaged with me. And I interrupted and said, oh, look, I used to be a registered nurse, so, I understand what's going to be happening. I said, I used to be a director on the Centre for Compassion in New Zealand, and one of the things we advocated over there was that all medical practitioners would be present for at least 1 minute prior to serving a patient, unless it was an absolute crisis. And they both went a little bit red.
Yes.
Embarrassment. I think she got it more than he did.
Right.
But, we've got to be, when we're present, even though things are happening, we can still, we've got our boundaries and they're really embedded. So we know what will be a demand for. And, not being heard is not on my list anymore. And so we can find ways to intervene without and orchestrate. It's like, I liken it very much to, I'm not a horsewoman, but I'm told if you're leading a team of 6 or 8 horses, the horsemen are so sensitive in their fingers that they know through the feel in the reins what each horse needs to bring them into total alignment.
Wow.
So it's a bit like having that for ourselves. There's all these threads of our life and being able to bring them in. And they're never all equal all the time. You know, life does on ups and downs. But knowing the threads and knowing that we can harness them.
Well, I think that this is your expertise to a T. My goodness. I mean, being able, I can, you know, I saw that on Facebook where you were hurt, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I hope she's going to be okay and she's going to be able to come on the show for the interview, because I mean, I saw the gash. I mean, it didn't look pretty, and I'm thinking, oh no, but it sounds like it was quite a, it was quite an orchestration by you to have all these men taking care of you.
You know, and I've been single for a long time, so it's kind of doubly interesting. My sister said to me, oh, did any of them leave you their card? And I said, well, as a matter of fact, one did.
I love it. That is so great. I love it. Oh, that's so fantastic.
Yeah,
so would you say that you're an
suturing being done.
expert in, and why? Why do you believe that you're an expert in, and why?
You know, a phrase that I use repeatedly is, you know, supporting people to find joy when it appears there's none. But I have some parameters around what I think joy is. I don't think joy is just bliss. I think joy is all of it. And when we can see all the things in our life playing out and be really sensitive to our own body and the bodies of those around us, then we're very much at choice around how we can move through it. And I made a commitment back at the turn of the century, you know, whatever comes up now, I'm going to go to it. And what I found is, you know, like with that fall, for example, a couple of days later, and even now it's quite painful, but at the time it wasn't, you know, endorphins and things. Right. But seeing it, appreciating it, knowing that moment, I don't think I'm going to get there to the conference and do my launch, but totally accepting. Yeah. So a lot of Buddhist practice there around, first I was walking and now I'm sitting. Yeah. And not pressing, not forcing, because when we try and force things, we create resistance, and that's where the pain is. Right. So, you know, being able to, I think that day I surrendered for several hours, not necessarily consciously. Right. There was a level of that just unfolding by manner of who I've been being in the lead up to now. Yeah, my commitment to ever evolve and step into a higher place, which meant then once she'd finished suturing, I thought it was about 11 o'clock. My time frame at the conference had gone, but I thought, well, I might as well go back to the conference. So I get a cab to the conference. The organizer is very surprised to see me, and he had made other plans, and he said, let's just have you walk in and interrupt those other plans and take over and do your show. And so I did. And I'm so proud of, I walked in, I put a clown nose on. People are like in the audience stunned because they know that I was not coming. Sat down next to the person I was going to interview, talked to the camera, as you know, and then to the guest, and away we went. And I had my closing piece organised, and the middle bit just happened. You know, so that
I love it.
We work too hard to make things happen, but when we're, you know, back here in this pure place of authentic expression, then things can unfold. The universe allows.
It does. It does allow. And it's so funny. You think, you're not going to this conference. And I always feel like there's no accidents, right? I mean,
Yes.
there's no accidents about anything. I mean, everything that happens has a place, and it's going to get us there or not, no matter what. So you're right. We just have to roll with it. And
Yes.
you did. And it turned out okay.
Absolutely.
Ah,
And perhaps even better, the whole thing of, my keynote on the Sunday to the same group was very much about conversational intelligence, and one of the key points was about what's possible. And that was only possible by some intentions I set back in 2001. And how I've lived into that, irrespective of circumstances. So, it's been messy, especially the first few years. I had people back then come to me when I'd speak at conferences in those first couple of years, and they would say, I can't wait to see how you evolve, So they saw the potential, but they also saw the awkwardness and the pain that still lingered. A lot of professional speakers will say, oh, you shouldn't hit the platform until you're totally clean. And I disagree, because people in pain recognize pain.
yes.
And so if we acknowledge that, healing is an ongoing process. We're not, okay, you've got 2 weeks and then you're back at work and you're done. It's an enduring process and a scale of learning over time. Yeah. An individual for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing about it is that so often we're told not to feel the pain. We're told to just get up and just get going, get on with it. So to feel pain, for me, I did that for a very long time where, just pull up your bootstraps and get going. It's over. Just let it be. But boy, oh boy, when you do that, it creeps right back up.
Yes.
And you better deal with it, because if you don't get to that other side. And if you're someone that is authentic, like you speak, you want people to see the pain, the joy, whatever it is that you have, because then you're not looked at as being this person up here that's not attainable.
Yes. With this group on the Sunday, in the keynote, I shared with them that the harshest sentence ever delivered to me was from my ex, and one of his parting words was, no, I don't love you, and I never loved you.
Oh.
And we'd been together 20 years, and my experience of all of that had been, huge connection, huge level of intimacy. We worked together as well as partnership, personal partnership, and my thought at the time was, if that's true, then everything I've ever known is not true. And so I disintegrated. And the last 17 years has been my reintegration.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And it could have been terrible.
Oh, yeah.
If I hadn't decided, whatever comes up, I'm going to it. I don't know why exactly I said that, but it was what came, and I've committed to it.
Right.
And when you commit beyond your default, then you see remarkable change, and messages. The messages that come from the world are just extraordinary.
Extraordinary. Exactly. And when you talk about intimacy, you say your vision is to create an intimacy revolution.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that. I love that.
In 2004, I did some coach training with a lady by the name of Sally Anderson in New Zealand. And one of the visions I created at that time was that by 2020, we would be having an intimacy revolution. So I didn't see too many signs of that along the way. In the beginning, I found a lot of barriers for the joyologist. I was more accepted in healthcare, but in the business setting, it was like, well, look, we have fun Friday after work. This is actually serious business we do here, Pat. So thanks, but no thanks. So it took a long time.
Right.
And until I met a business called Kensington Swan, one of New Zealand's biggest law firms, and I'd given a presentation called Engaging with Intimacy, and some of their team were in the audience and came and spoke to me and said, "Oh, we so need you to come into our business. We're doing a 5-year client intimacy program." And I'm like, no. So I think that company is a world leader in terms of lawyers, especially the fact that they were going to commit 5 years to finding a deeper level of intimacy and engagement with each other and then with their clients it just heralded for me, we're there. This is it. That was about 2008. And then since then, I've presented over 600 times. And, there's shift and growth and change in what I'm presenting, but the core things are the same. And, that when you break it down, most of your listeners will have heard of it, but, into me you see, with the word intimacy, and, to share vulnerably, to let other people see any pain that still lingers around whatever it is that you're sharing, and we share the lessons. We open up that possibility for others, and we don't know who it's going to be, but just the very fact that you'll commit to do that so serves humanity. And it doesn't matter if you only ever address one person at a time. It's not about addressing large groups, because we know from quantum physics, what we contribute ripples out.
That's right. It's right. And I don't know. I think things have to change. We have to get closer to people. We have to, especially in the workplace, we spend most of our time there, and, why be a stranger there? It doesn't make any sense to me. It just never has. That concept has never made sense, where you go to work and you do your job and then you go home. Yeah, but what about these people that I'm working with, 24/7? Who are they? What's their story? So.
One of the practices I use, not everyone is working at a job they love.
Right.
And when I come across people who are in that place and unhappy with their work environment, I suggest they go and do Martin Seligman's VIA Signature Strengths questionnaire, which reveals 24 signature strengths in order of priority, and then have them print out the top 5 and take them with them wherever they go. So if you can integrate your top 5 signature strengths with your job description, then I guarantee with time, you will find more joy, more opportunities, and more possibilities. Purely, it's by merit of the way you're looking at it and perceive,
Perception, right?
And we can do no better than serving someone else. And it may not be your boss. It could be a peer, someone who's low self-esteem, someone who needs some encouragement, mentoring. When we shift and we go into that place, then, the endorphins are flowing, oxytocin comes straight to the front of the brain, and boom. We're creating great energy for ourselves, but also for others. even though this is not the dream job, you know?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
There's things that can make it better just by
Yep.
your surroundings. You are your environment. So,
Yeah.
engage and, engage in that. You're currently writing your next book called Joyful Empowerment. That makes so much sense. The only way out is through. I love that. This is a significant turning point for you. Yes?
Yes. I've been a long time trying to write it. It never felt like I'd reached a point of completion, but there were also aspects of my life that I'd never shared with anyone for over 30 years. And in the last 12 or 18 months, I've become really clear that that now will be a part of moving forward. It will mean putting a bit of an elephant in the room when I give presentations, but I'll pre-frame that. My first relationship ended up being violent, and I never shared any of it at all. And the last episode of that was horrific, and it imprinted in my mind my perception of self. So, although intervening years, I was always out there doing stuff. I've won 11 advertising awards. I've got about 8 or 9 speaking awards and a range of other things. I was operating over the top of, I'm too fat, I'm not good enough, and I'm terrified. And there's a level, especially when joyology kicked in, there's a level of inauthenticity around having that deeply seated and selling joy. So my own personal journey through that has been to come to a place where I can be ready to share the story, and be equipped to do it well. Yeah. Because sometimes if it's a biggie and we throw the elephant in the room, we can lose everybody. So we need to pre-frame. What I'm going to share with you next is big. It's going to could create an elephant in the room. It might stink. And knowing how many other people suffer violence and abuse, either physical or verbal, it's there. Knowing how many are being treated for depression, that's 1 in 4 here in Australia. Knowing the incidence of suicide, 1 every 2 hours. It's like this large group that I'm addressing, it's all here. So sharing deeply and vulnerably, but with care, not to fracture or further turn away any souls that are in the room, but to bring them closer to, their own healing, and, my healing path and what might contribute there, and anything else that they add to it. And I had one woman once, I had shared, I had been successful, written my first book. I always arrived looking really good. I had this amazing hat that I used to wear, got out of a little sports car. So I was looking good. But my bank account was consistently in the red. I lived for a year in my overdraft. And I shared that. And this one woman came after the presentation and she was crying, and I thought, oh, what have I done? And she said, when you shared that, she said, I knew I was going home. She said, last night we sat at the table and said, we can't do any more. We're going to lose the house. We've tried everything. We'll just have to let it go. And she said, hearing your story and what's happened for you and how you've handled it, she said, I'm going home tonight and we're going to have another conversation and I'm going to find a way. And she rang about 6 weeks later and they found a way. So, we don't know what we seed. Others may have found something too. I don't know. They didn't come and say, but she did. Yeah. And that's all we need. Yeah. For me,
If we can help one person, we've done our job, right?
Lights on, love it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, that's so fantastic. And it's just funny. You never know, your ability to change someone's day or life just by doing, saying, having a conversation. You just don't know. And I've heard that over and over again from people that have been in your kind of same situation where they're talking and sharing, and someone comes up later, or someone was going to do something, and because they heard them speak, they said, I don't need to do that. I can do this. I mean, brilliant. It's just brilliant what we can give back just by purely being right here, right now. That's it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Since 2001, I've been handing out or posting 3 pieces of what I call glad mail a day.
Nice.
I have sent in the intervening years over 10,000 pieces of mail that celebrate, honour, congratulate wherever people are right now. I also give out 3 pieces of mail every keynote that I do, and I write those pieces of mail the night before, thinking to myself, there are going to be 3 people in the room who need to hear something from me. What do they need to hear? And so I just write that. And then random, ask, at a particular point in the presentation, who would like some glad mail. Often people are slow to put their hand up.
Oh,
Isn't it interesting? We are still struggling with receiving.
yeah.
And every single time, without fail, those 3 people will come and say, how did you know how to say that?
How did you know I needed to hear that today, right?
Yeah.
It's just,
and what is at the core of that is their pain's my pain. So, when I share from my learning from that, then it's got to land. It's got to be appropriate. It's got to connect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You recently toured with Patch Adams. Wow.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that. Share a few highlights of that.
When I met a lady who had toured with him, and she showed me some photos, and it broke my heart. So I rang Patch and I had a chat, and I said, I'd like to come on your next tour. He goes to Russia on the 1st of November every year, and he's been doing that for over 30 years now. And so I said, I'd like to be on that next tour. And he said, don't come because of me, Pat. Come because you want to find and spend your clown self. Come because you want to experience for yourself the disparity between rich and poor. And come because you'd like to make at least one Russian friend. And so I chose to go. So 16 days, 36 people, Moscow and St. Petersburg. And he said, I said to him, should I go to clown school? And he said, well, you can go if you like, but if you do, go with the intention of failing, because I don't want a polished clown. I want people who can walk into the room, sit down in anything and make something happen. So I did do clown school and improv acting and a range of other things. But the whole 16 days, we were just in the moment. We had great moments of joy and such sadness for their plight. The poverty is extraordinary. 1.5 million orphans, no light bulbs, no hand towel, no toilet paper, no soap, food of very low quality, dirt floors. And we would walk in, 36 clowns who all had bubble machines singing You Are My Sunshine. And things happened. Perhaps the most significant, if I share with you, I walked past Patch in a room one day and he said, come and commune with me, Pat. So I came and sat beside him. And he was holding a child with cerebral palsy, perhaps about 2, little girl, and she was crying and very distressed. His Patch is 6'6", his arms are very long, so he's holding her little head out here away from him, and her little legs are up against his chest, and he's rocking and he's singing a medley of songs from Matt Monro and Dean Martin, and he's just making it up, and it's quite nonsense. I'm just sitting beside him, and as he rocked and sang, this little poppet started to relax. And as her little limbs, and I've never seen that, as her little limbs started to go limp, he started to cry. But he kept singing and he kept rocking. Tears are streaming down his cheek. And then she went totally limp in his arms, totally relaxed. There was none of this, as their little limbs are. And in that moment, he was still rocking and singing, but now he's blubbering. Tears are pouring, snot coming out his nose. And in that moment, I thought, dear God, I have never sat with a man who would let me see that level of emotional expression. And my world changed from that day to be fully appreciative of the starkness of who Patch Adams is, but also who I am. It was like, he said, don't come because of me. It's not about me. Right. And the rest was about my experiences. A little girl at the Deaf, Dumb and Blind Institute, Satyev Posad in Moscow. As I came in the door, she came and took my hand, a little girl in a blue velvet dress, pulled me down on the floor, and she started playing with my earrings. Oh. And as she's playing, I just felt such joy. I knew something beyond, I got goosebumps now, beyond what my previous experience was about to happen. So she's holding my earrings and she started to hum. Oh. And I knew by the tonal quality of her voice, she's deaf. So she hummed for a little while, still holding on. And I thought, oh, okay, my turn. So I hummed. And she hummed and I hummed for 45 minutes. And in that 45 minutes, I had no stray thought. I didn't think, oh, I wonder what kind of vodka we're going to try tonight. Wonder what I'll do and then come back home. There was none of that. There was just her and I. And I've never been that present for anybody before or since. Just the most wondrous moment with no language.
Yeah, no language.
No language.
Wow, what a great experience.
So, we would get back on the buses and everyone's had a different experience, and sometimes we'd be laughing and sometimes we'd be crying. But we all knew we need to come back to a place of balance in order to go and do again or be present again. Right. And we had big debriefs each night. And when I returned, and it's continued through to now really, I felt more vital and alive than ever in my whole life because I'd experienced it all. That was when it really cemented for me, this whole breadth of emotional expression and how it serves us. Yeah. And I'm only beginning to learn really on a quantum plane, all the shifts and changes that would have been happening in my cellular body, over that fortnight. Patch is patron of my laughter channel, and I have an interview coming shortly to be released for that. So, and an enduring friend.
That's wonderful. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about your laughter channel, and I mean that's just exciting to me. I really want to hear about it.
In 2004, I made a lot of commitments in 2004, 2020 Intimacy Revolution. Right. I committed I would own the laughter channel for Southeast Asia. Wow. So it's taken till now to bring it forward. I had a radio program for a few years. I did some TV host training. And then the last couple of years have been unwell. So that's been a time of another re-emergence in a way.
Yeah.
And now really, yes, the time is right. I've got enough connections to be interviewing the people that I want others to hear, and enough confidence now in my, as an authority, if you like.
Yeah. Right.
To know that all the stories that are up here in the little compartments have significance, and in these encounters. So I've created, what I've written is the first 13 episodes, so it's season 1. It'll be produced live in front of a live audience. It will be online in the first instance, but once the whole 13 are done, it will be launched on the Aurora Foxtel Challenge. So at the end of that time, I'd like to be ready for season 2. And another level of, I need to learn a lot about where can I go with this. So there are some unanswered things, but I very much would like it to be a legacy. How can I create this so that it will endure long after me, that others might come in and like to manage it, generate a life of its own.
Right.
And it's called The Laughter Channel, but it's not just about comedy. It's about where human interest meets humour interest.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That is so great. That is just fantastic. It's been my dream to do something for TV, do something. And it's my, it's sort of simmering. I'm not sure what it's going to be yet, but once you get it, I lived in Southeast Asia for a little while, and I loved it so much. And so that's just fantastic that you've come to that, and it's in fruition now. I mean, wow, that's fantastic. Just fantastic.
And again, the opportunity came to launch at the Laughter Wellbeing Conference, and I was invited to do that, and I thought, oh, okay, this could be really good. And then the accident happens, and you're like, oh, really? And then it still happens anyway. It is just like the bigger demonstration of exactly what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're doing a tour, a national tour, and what's the focus of that? I mean, in Australia. Now, do you live in New Zealand?
No, I used to. I've been back in Australia 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah,
got
I am Australian, but I was over there for 17 years and home again in Queensland. Yeah.
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
Yeah. So on my return, I was unwell. I had a huge immune problem and joint condition, which has taken through to now pretty much to resolve. I was under the umbrella of a disability support group, and funnily enough, am now involved in a joint venture with them, delivering this mental health in the workplace program to leaders and managers. So it's coming from the other end, actually, not delivering to those who are hurting, but to those who can actually make a difference, So, no point delivering on the ground if the people up top are not on the same page. Right. So it's essentially about educating them about the broad parameters of what mental health is, and what mental ill health is, and equipping them so that they can have the brave conversations to go beyond, are you okay? Because are you okay? And someone will say yes, and maybe they're not. So, and to help them see the subtleties of things, it's not just one encounter that has you think, oh, I'm a bit worried about him or her. It's more about having them see how over a period of time to see the smaller things. So they've got to be more engaged. They've got to be more actively working with individuals and using their observation skills and their humanity.
Yeah, I love it.
And I've been just delighted, actually, because there's been about 98% men in the room, only a very small percentage of women. And I went kind of prepared that this might be hard. I'm not sure how they're going to go with
right.
going to this place. Well, I've, naughty Pat, made some presumptions because it's been extraordinary, the sharing of stories. And when they've shared those stories, you can tell by how the other men are responding that the other men didn't know. So there'll be this whole new heightened awareness that now, see, that will filter out amongst, the leaders and the managers, but it'll also filter to their teams. And there's a raft of teaching tools that we use, and it's like they can filter those one by one. They can make it part of an enduring, little weekly meeting. We'll look at 10 minutes on this today. I'm just amazed.
That's awesome.
And, I think we can make more inroads there because these people will start to shine their light in a new way, which means those who aren't seeing stuff are more likely to see them. When we're shining, people will notice. And we'll especially get men having conversations that they haven't had before. And that augurs well right out into, their lives with their partners and their children. It just kind of filters right across. It's not just about work.
Right.
Like
And being able to talk about mental illness is a big deal because, I think we've all been touched by that in our families in some respect. I know I have. I know friends that have. I know a woman in Denver, Colorado that is a big advocate and has really made a lot of changes for mental health advocacy in Colorado. So, it's good to have the conversations and take away the stigma of that and, and how to do that without offending or, having that conversation. So that's fantastic that you're doing that and bringing that to light.
Mention one person. There's a lady by the name of Rosemary Glasser. I don't know if you've come across her yet.
Oh.
She presents on conversational intelligence. I know you would enjoy her programs and her concepts, and she talks about the importance of conversation, and the levels of conversation. And we're often just stuck in level one, which is, would you pass the salt? Thanks very much. So getting deeper and deeper engagement, and, the influence that has in the workplace and elsewhere.
Right. It's really, it's fascinating, and it's good to have that conversation. And really, communication resolves all problems. That's my thinking. So, if we're not talking, nothing can be resolved, nothing can change, nothing can be any different than it is right at this moment. So, I love that concept. What are the 3 recommendations that you would make to people who are hurting?
Well, I probably would have had 100, but I thought, no, keep it to 3. One of the most valuable tools for me has been journaling over the years. It's like as you get it down on the page, then so it can be released. And it's like tidying up the desk. You clear your mind. Things get arranged more neatly in the mind because the hanya stuff has been put out, and you find a clearer space. So it's this release process, And over time, don't go back and read it every day, but every few months maybe, and you'll begin to be able to make sense and meaning of your expressions and what's been happening and how you've responded to it, and see things in a different way. My encounter with it began 2001, end of 2001. I started chatting to a man online who was from Queensland when I was in New Zealand. And he was a police officer whose wife had died. He had actually, after about a year, retrained to be, she died of cancer, retrained to be a palliative care nurse. Boom. And he's the funniest man I've ever met. So he rang me from Brisbane 6 nights a week for 2 hours for 3 months. I journaled that period, and when I got to the last page, he disappeared as quickly as he'd come. But I was not heartbroken. Something had happened in that intervening time that had me see, I was totally bereft, and he arrived and lifted me up. He shared such, we did meet later, but he shared such love, music, verse, so many things, left me with an incredible sense of self reflected in all that he sent, and enabled me to move on from that point. And like when my husband left, I was shattered. When this man left, I understood. And that, there's a saying, people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. So he was a season, or a reason and a season. And, he showed me how he, in the place of his pain. So that's one recommendation. My second is to identify 2 things that you absolutely love to do. I love to speak, and when the lights go on for somebody, I'm done. Wow, that's it. And then I also love to paint, and when I paint, I don't need anybody. So I think we need those 2 things. We need something external where we're of service and we can feel good about ourselves as a result of what we're doing. But we also need this quiet space, whatever that is, for individuals. And then we've got to orchestrate that we get enough of each, right? And that could be a gradual progression. And it could begin with just, a quiet walk on the beach. It could evolve in many ways, but 2 things you love to do and just begin. And then the third one, if viewers are interested, they're very welcome to have a free copy of my book, Anti-Zap, A Joyful Prescription for the Unhappiness Epidemic, a book created after my tour, or during my tour with Patch Adams. A is for amuse, N is for enthuse, T is for trust, I is for intuition, Z is for zeal, A is for attitude, and C is for creativity. So a smallish book, I think it's about 100 pages, but designed to step people through a place of pain, and each one has some little activities at the end that people can choose to do or not, to cement some of the learning.
Wow, that's great. That's fantastic. We're out of time, but I have to have you come back because we didn't even get to touch on half the things I need to know and everybody else needs to know about you, because
Thank you.
You're a person that is showing us out here that no matter what happens in our life, we can create something else that we want. to see. And out of the pain, you created joy. I mean,
Yes.
we all are capable of that. And sometimes we don't believe it. But, you know, I don't know everything that happened to you, but it was traumatic. I'm for certain when I can see it in your eyes when you talk about it. And to be able to sit here today and share and give and keep giving shows that you are so authentic in your pain. And I appreciate that. I'm lucky to be in the world with you. Really. Really. So, you know, I'm really just grateful that you were on tonight and that we got a chance to meet each other and talk, and you were able to share what you shared. I want everyone to know out there that I will have Pat on my website, and you'll have information about her. I'll put her contact information so that you can reach her. I'll get some information from you, Pat, about the book that you are willing to share, which is fantastic. The video will be on my site. It will be on Facebook. It will be on my YouTube channel. And I just want to thank you. I want to thank you for coming on tonight.
Thank you.
I very much enjoyed it. And I'm just really grateful to all of you that tuned in and were able to listen. I know sometimes it's hard to get these live, but you'll be seeing it. It's going to be around. It's going to be flying all over space. So please have a look if you weren't on tonight, and enjoy the interview that we had together. So thank you, Pat. I really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for tuning in. And Pat will come back. I can guarantee you that. She isn't done with us yet. So again, thank you so much. And I'll see you next week for What's Your Story?